My name is Carla, and I am a product designer. But at the very core of my being, I'm really a hybrid. I am trained as an industrial designer and mechanical engineer to make physical things, but along the way became very seduced by the digital world. And so I'm both a industrial mechanical engineer and an interaction designer. And being a hybrid is both wonderful and problematic. It's problematic because people want to put a label on you and try to figure out who you are, and they can't. But it's also very wonderful because it allows you to carve out a space that's really special and that's your own. And for me, that space is interaction for physical products. And having this special space has given me the opportunity to work on some really wonderful projects. This is one of them, and it also is my strong connection to Atlanta. During my year as a visiting associate professor at Georgia Tech, I was a designer of the shells for this robot. His name is Simon. Simon is an upper torso, humanoid, social robot. And what that means is that Simon takes cues from people and uses them to learn how to do certain tasks and how to actually express himself back and relate to people. So for example, there are pads in Simon's hands. If you hand him an object, he'll hold it up to his eyes, which are cameras. And if he doesn't know what to do, he'll ask, and then he'll actually learn from that. And we tried to build in as many modes of expression as possible. You can see that there are these kind of helmet ear pods, and they have LED lights embedded in them that can change color and intensity. So this gives us another aspect of expression. And here are some of Simon's different expressions. And he's really quite expressive, and it's really quite a special moment the first time you meet him, and you're able to just interact the way you interact with a person. But we also did design Simon to be somewhere in between a machine and a creature. So there's also a lot of appliance aesthetics so that we temper people's expectations. But Simon is really a research platform meant to push the boundaries of what an appliance in the home might be. And what I do on a day-to-day basis is I work for a firm called Smart Design, and we work on creating products for everyday life, such as the ones you see here. But what I'm always trying to do is push this idea of interaction for physical objects and bring some of what Simon has in terms of being able to interact with them naturally and with intuition into these everyday objects. But that's pretty challenging because what you see here is how a lot of objects have been due to economics, due to this, what you can afford in an everyday object, and I call this the black rectangle. So we were often limited to just push buttons and whatever could be bought off the shelf. But now we're starting to see a lot of changes. This is a lamp from Mathmos, and by gesturing with your hand, you can control the intensity of the light. We can also caress objects. This is a concept from Bang & Olufsen for a remote control that you gesture. And we can also use our voice and yell or talk. This is a wonderful project by an artist whose name is Kelly Dobson, and what she did is she created a number of appliances where it's kind of the flip of Simon, and what you have to do is talk the appliance's language. So if you create the sound that the blender makes, you can start to relate to the blender. But I think it's got some really interesting implications for how we might relate to an object. So some of my colleagues at Smart created this Arrow Hive. It's a router, and one of the things we're starting to see is expressive lighting. So we're becoming very sensitive to changes in color and intensity of light. A router is usually a really mysterious device, but with this slice cut into the corner, you can kind of see inside and see what's happening inside the brain of the router. This is something that we're really familiar with, and what I wanted to talk about is dynamic behavior. So not only do we have lights, but we can program those lights to have some kind of behavior over time. This is the sleep indicator, and you might have noticed it kind of breathes. And people seem to understand this intuitively, because the designers at Apple are really sensitive about this, and they designed this to pulse at 12 beats 12 pulses per minute, which is the same as an adult's breathing rate. We breathe at 12 breaths per minute. So we just look at that and we say, oh yes, it's still alive, it's breathing. This is one of a series of experiments from an interaction lab that I created at Smart Design. And what I was trying to do is, in addition to looking at the intensity and the color of the light, what I wanted to do is, just with a simple matrix of 8 by 8 LEDs, you can start to add onto that iconography as well as animation. So this is a cube that can be programmed to have 4 different states, and if you roll it on one of the 4 sides that you see, it will actually change. So what we did here is something that you can have on your desk to switch your status. So if you're really stressed, you put it on the really stressed face, and if you're happy and want to be spoken to, you put it on that happy face, and you just use this object as an expression of yourself. So what's allowing this to happen? We have kind of a perfect storm of elements. Certainly advances in robotics. What's really helped my job is the affordability of sensors. Things that cost a lot of money before can now be embedded in everyday objects. Object tagging with things like RFID, wireless communications, and broadband. All of these things have started to accelerate at the same time to allow a lot of opportunity. And what this means is that we can start having this whole object interaction, and it really enhances the emotional value that objects have for us because we start to relate to them, the way we looked at that Mack Light. This is a floor cleaning robot made by a company called Nido, and I worked on the design of a future version of this robot that is deliberately designed to be very expressive, because we knew from the Roomba that people tend to really get attached to their robots, and they give them names, and they don't want to give up that one they had because that's their special one. And they treat them like pets, and even my own mom will say, oh yeah, she did a really good job. So in our future version of this, we paid attention not only to lighting patterns and sound. I hired a sound designer to create an entire language for this robot so that it can express itself at different moments. For example, if stuck under a couch, there's a moment of distress. So what should distressed sounds sound like? And also we paid attention to movement. When does it stop or hesitate, or when does it move forward? But we're about to add another element to all of this in terms of the designer's palette, and that's networking. And that's what I'm really getting very excited about at the moment, because the conversation is about to get a lot more interesting. So now not only can it buzz and shimmy and shine and speak to you in so many ways, but it can also pull information from the cloud, and we'll start to have these objects that we're commonly starting to refer to as an Internet of Things. So things like a lamp or a coffee mug or even the cube on your desk can take data that's live on the internet and bring that back to you, and you can speak back to it and start this conversation that's much larger than between you and the object. During 2008, the number of things connected to the internet exceeded the number of people on Earth, according to Cisco Systems. By 2020, there will be 50 billion. So our world is going to be filled with these connected objects. We're starting to see some evidence of it now. This is Energy Hub, which my colleagues at Smart also worked on. And what this allows you to do is plug in your everyday appliances, such as a television set or a computer or a lamp or a fan, and you get what the researcher Mike Kuniowski calls information shadows. So we can start to have a virtual representation of each of those objects. And then once you connect to the internet, what you can then do is start tracking utility rates, giving people information about their own behavior in using those objects, and so on and so forth, providing a really rich conversation. This is another object which some of you may have seen in the news. It's called the Nest Thermostat. So not only are we relating to these objects when we're in the same room with them, but we can also relate to them remotely. With this and the other system, you can actually track what's happening in your home through a smartphone or mobile device, and you can actually start controlling your home from a distance. Where I'm starting to pay a lot of attention is in small startups that are thinking about this Internet of Things and really doing innovative things, because we're at kind of a bridge moment where we're going to see this technology in our new products, but it's not quite there yet. So this system, Mafia, plugs into an automobile, and then it's connected to the internet. And what it allows you to do is, for example, you can find where you parked your car, which is a problem for me all the time, because I always rent them and I don't know where they are. I don't even know what they look like. And you can have it send you a text message when you pass something relevant to you, or you can even set up a group of emergency contacts so that if something happens to you, you have this custom list of people who get alerted to know what's going on. And this is another one. It's called Green Goose. That's a small startup. And I'm really excited about this one. I've just ordered their first product and it hasn't come in yet. But I've become really obsessed with taking some of the sensors and things that I work with, and I've been putting them on my dog to see like, when he sleeps and when he's awake and how long is our walk. And this company has started to understand that I'm not the only one with these kind of nerdy intentions. And what they've done is they've created a series of stickers that you can attach to the everyday objects in your home. And the stickers show when some movement has happened with the object. And then it communicates with a hub that's attached to your modem. So what this essentially does is it's taking objects that are non-technological in any way, shape, or form and giving them a voice and the ability to connect to the internet and connect to this Internet of Things. So for example, if you want to know how often you watered the plant, you put a sticker on it. If you want to know when you fed the dog, you put a sticker on the dog food. When you want to know how many times you took him out, you put a sticker on the leash, and so on and so forth. And you can get as creative as you want with it. I saw a TED Talk by the fellow who created this, and he did half the talk playing the cello, and he had put one of the stickers on the bow of the cello. So this is all wonderful and good, and technology is so fascinating, but for me as a designer, it really has to matter to people in their everyday lives. So how does this really change people's lives in an everyday way? So I've started to envision a few different scenarios. These illustrations were created by my colleague Evan Allen, and we've been working on a point of view around Internet of Things. So one thing that happens is learning and feedback allows people to have behavior change. So for example, people may want to eat healthier or know more about what's happening with, in this case, blood pressure. In the future, you might have a shirt that you wear, and the shirt can communicate and be connected, and it can let you know if you've had spikes in your reading or your blood pressures are abnormally high, and then it can connect you and give you some tracking. Where this really benefits is that people have a difficulty at the moment, but if they're able to view their behavior over time or see connections between maybe a change in your prescription or change in your diet, then they can start to really draw the lines together and make connections that will help them change their behavior. What I call analog plus is something that takes familiar devices and gives them the ability to see and hear. So for example, if this tennis racket were embedded with sensors that were also connected to the internet, it could start just quietly recording what's happening with your swing, give you coaching advice, compare you to other people who are also playing tennis. And with the analog plus idea, you don't have to learn to use this. You don't learn to use the computer or learn to use the mouse. You just use your objects in an everyday way. Anytime, anywhere is an enhanced view of location. So just like we saw with the Mafia, you can have your automobile that says, hey, there's a parking spot a couple of blocks away, or here are a few nearby restaurant reviews, and can give you guidance on what you need right at that moment. And then if we do things like object tagging, and we combine that with social networks, we can start to have objects that help people connect to communities. So in this scenario here, we have a wine bottle that maybe has an RFID tag or is somehow tagged so that it becomes part of this Internet of Things. And what people can do is they can keep track of how many bottles they have, how the bottles relate to one another, where this bottle actually came from, and get some education about the grapes in the region in France, for example. Your friends can also have a view into your collection. Maybe you're having a party, they can add to it. You can be part of a wine club where virtual collections compare to one another, etc. So in terms of designing these objects, and one of the things that's really exciting about doing a TED Talk is I know that the audience is so full of really creative people who are entrepreneurs and who are thinking about doing creative things with technology and everyday objects. So there are a few things that help me in my work in terms of designing for an Internet of Things. One is that information overload is never fun. So you may have heard that there is a small subculture of people who are very into tracking everything they do. And that's not everyone. And what we try to keep in mind is information hierarchies and also just isolating the information that's appropriate at a given moment. Another thing is what I call life now, data later. So it may be really interesting to know how much water you've used or how long you sat on the couch, but if you have to log onto a smartphone or flip some kind of switch control board, that's really not going to make your life better or be interesting. What you want to do is lead your life the way you normally do, and then be able to view the data later. So you can see trends, you can see what's happening, you can see what was happening with the utility rates or what was happening with water globally. Context is everything. So if you're waiting by the bus or for a train, it might be fun to know that all your friends are nearby or that there's a coupon at that coffee shop right there. But if you're driving by, you wouldn't want all of these things coming towards you all at once. So being aware of what's appropriate at the time and place is really something that's critical for designing a successful product in the Internet of Things. And communication defines personality. This is one that I think about a lot because even before the Simon Project, I tend to look at objects and see little personalities in them, even if they don't move or talk or say anything. Even this Logitech camera, I tend to think is like a little parrot. It's going to walk around. So we want to think about the brand and the values that are going to be important to people. Like, what role does this object play in people's lives? And how does this personality fit with what it's supposed to be doing and the emotional context of the object. So thinking about those light patterns, those sounds, and the movement of the object are all going to contribute to a personality, combined with whatever information you want this device to display. And playing nice with others. So while it's really wonderful to have this coffee maker that's going to beep when the coffee's done, and this other washing machine that's going to text you when the clothes are ready, and the window thermometer, and this, if you have all of these things beeping and texting you at the same time, it's going to drive you crazy. So being aware of the entire ecosystem of products that your product is within is really critical to keeping people happy and not having them go crazy. And finally, knowing when to borrow the screen is something that's also going to be very helpful, because whether we like it or not, people have these things with them all the time. And they allow for a really rich display. They also allow for a pretty rich interaction, much more than if you were trying to add lights and sound to an isolated object that's custom, that's made in small quantities. So sometimes you want to think about moments when you want to borrow the screen. For example, there are a lot of objects in the medical arena, blood pressure monitors, heart rate monitors, that do tether to a smartphone and use the screen for the richness of data, but still use the physical object for what's going to be what I call analog plus, something that is friendly and understandable to the person using it. So what's next is that we're just going to see a whole lot of these kind of objects, and I think it's a really exciting world. It's also going to be a bit of a cacophony, but if As designers and entrepreneurs and business people, we work together to really keep people's needs in mind. I think it can be a really rich world. So thank you. Stay.
Thank you.